Today, we will examine two horrific events that end with dreadful outcomes. The first story describes the struggles of a caver whose body is twisted at an incredibly odd angle in a narrow passage. The second story is even more impactful. You will witness the step-by-step journey toward death caused by a sudden injury. Viewer discretion is advised. On the afternoon of March 22, 1959, in Peak Cavern, just beneath the village of Castleton in Derbyshire, 20-year-old Neil Moss of Oxford University, together with a handful of cavers, was preparing to try a narrow rift dropping from a large chamber about 300 meters in from the entrance. The air was motionless, the lamp's glow was wan, the hours were edging towards sunset, and Peak Cavern was a place where patience and planning were tested. The team's plan was simple. Probe the tight shaft in the chamber floor to see whether it was passable and where it led. Have one or two people safely lower down from the floor to look, make a brief reconnaissance, then return. They carried a steel wire ladder, a belay rope, a spare hand pulley, 2 carbide lamps, and a flashlight. Yet, when a plan is simple, detail matters even more, and that day a small detail was overlooked. In a tight descent, to rely on a single narrow wire ladder over wet, downward sloping rock, and leave the retreat to the ladder and rope combination, and to carry no sampling tube, canary test, or CO2 indicator strip to check air quality. The first meters were easy. As Neil slid downward, the constriction tightened from the line of his waist up toward his shoulders. The wet, muddy floor made his footing slick. The ladder's rung spacing was a full step, but the shaft's angle pressed his body slightly crosswise, creating a squeeze between knees and chest. The team waited above, listening for signals. The sounds from below were clear at first, then seeped into rock echoes and grew muffled. As Neil probed deeper, the throat of the shaft began, at some point, to pinch. One more rung, then another. And suddenly his body turned into a key in a keyhole, locking at the shoulders. For the first time, a strain rang in his voice. "I'm a bit stuck. Wait." 2 men above took the rope. "All right, pull," and they hauled. The metal creaked faintly. The pressure on his abdomen increased. A tiny scraping sounded among the stones. Neil tried to set his feet again. Meanwhile, a small block parted from the wall and upset the ladder's stance. As the squeeze grew between ladder, body, and rock, the reach to the rungs narrowed. The ladder's 1-foot rung spacing, ironically, was now too wide for this lock. Retreat was no longer a matter of just pull. His body's own margin to work itself free had vanished. "Are you all right?" Calls from above came back, split by echo from below. The signal line was tugged lightly, and the reply came as a tremor. The guideline was the only line connecting him to the surface. The first hauling attempts were moderate, then a little harder. But his being wedged in the downward V-shaped section turned the pull into a lever that pinched him deeper. A try or two, a clatter somewhere on the ladder, then another haul, and a short crack like a fine fiber parting. Failure. Soon the foul air was noticed. The air had no sharp smell but a heavy taste. The lamp's flames were dimming. Breaths were becoming inadequate more quickly. CO2 collects in tight shafts. Every breath exhaled forms an invisible pool at the bottom. Panic breathing consumed the air faster. Slender rescuers from above descended in turn. Some got only a few meters down before retreating. Visibility dropped to 0. In another attempt, the rigging was changed. A pulley was set up. The haul line made steadier. There was now a flickering rhythm in the sounds from below. In the dark, seconds grew long. Dust, mud, and sweat fogged the lamp's glass. With several pulls, they tried inch by inch, methodically, cool-headed. But the shape of the shaft and the shifting tension of the ladder held the body locked like a key in a lock. A small oversight, a heavy price. One lamp's carbide was spent, and the spare flashlight came into play. From a distant gallery, the water first whispered, then brought a clearer sound of flow. As it grew, it wrote, "What if it floods?" in everyone's mental ledger. That night, it rained on the surface, and inside, the air felt heavier, more unwilling. The hauling rigs were rebuilt, ropes renewed. A stronger yet more controlled pull was tried, but each forceful effort meant another possible failure somewhere. The suspicion that the ladder had been weakened by earlier loads fed the fear of, if it snaps once more. The sound from below was now mostly a rasp. After a time, even the rasp came more rarely. The intervention and rescue stretched over days. Local teams, cave rescue organizations, slight, narrow-profile cavers were sent in one by one. Some passed most of the shaft, but were driven back at the most critical section by the suffocating weight of the air. The foul air prodded them to retreat. On some attempts, people discussed the idea of widening with a drill near the mouth of the rift, but each effort stirred the air below even more, erasing the breathing pockets. A medical officer, Dr. Hugh Kidd, listened to the breathing come and go in pursuit of the question, is there still a sign of life down there? As the breathing sounds faltered with time, all activity was halted. In the first hours of morning, counting water drops in a corner of the cave, the doctor listened into the dull stillness. There was no breath. It was the first time he had to declare a death without seeing the person. On the morning of March 24th, 1959, the voice from below no longer returned. Everyone locked on the question, do we bring the body out? Mud streaks on the faces above, sleeplessness in their eyes, the same weight on every shoulder. Might a new attempt mean a new victim? Neil's father, with a steady yet shaken voice, asked this. Do not risk other lives. Let the place where his son lay be his grave. It was a decision that eased and burdened the consciences of those inside at once. The mouth of the shaft was walled with stones brought down into the chamber. 1959, Neil Moss, R.I.P., was inscribed. That broad chamber now bore his name, Moss Chamber. Some newspapers wrote it was filled with concrete, but in truth, it was not. It was closed with loose stones. The cave was closed for a time, and the lights were kept on in respect. Later, the underworld resumed its life, but the name of that chamber opened the same door in the mind of everyone who entered. A retreat plan in a tight passage is not merely pull and we'll see later. In a tight section, panic breathing that makes the body swell consumes the air faster. Awareness of ventilation begins not with smell, but with measurement and scenarios. If a small stone's movement can alter the ladder to rock geometry, even the supposedly trivial rung spacing can make a difference. The guideline was the only line connecting him to the surface, but a single line must never be the only plan. The sentence, every centimeter was a battle, is not the experience of any one body below, but the mental experience of the entire team, and, inch by inch, methodically cool-headed, summarizes the feeling of the effort, but does not substitute for it. What substitutes for it is measurement, redundancy, scenario planning, and contingency management. Today that chamber is known as Moss Chamber. The name whispers the first question to everyone who enters. Where is your retreat plan? And the second, how will you know how bad the air can become? In the end, the cave was silent. The sounds, the drills, the creak of rope gave way to the patient rhythm of drops. Above, sometimes the wind stroked the grass before dawn, and sometimes the rain washed the land. Inside, the stone remained the same. The name of a young man was given to a room. What we recount is not heroics, but an act of remembrance. When we speak a name, it is a pledge not to repeat the same mistake. Imagine a hidden world beneath the earth, where cave walls shimmer with tiny lights, like stars in an underground sky. The Waitomo Caves in New Zealand are a magnet for thrill seekers, their beauty and mystery impossible to resist. Yet, beneath their glow lurk hidden dangers, tight passages, icy waters, and relentless rocks. Today, we're diving into a heart-stopping story from July 15th, 1995, when 16-year-old Mia Thompson's summer adventure became a desperate fight for survival. It was a chilly July morning in 1995 when Mia Thompson, a lively 16-year-old from Auckland, set off on a youth camp trip to explore the Waitomo Caves. Renowned for their glowworm-lit caverns and winding tunnels, these caves promised an epic adventure. Mia, alongside friends Caleb Ngata, Ava Bennett, and Finn Kawana, followed their guide, Oliver Harris, a seasoned caver with a gift for storytelling. The group buzzed with excitement, their headlamps dancing as they entered the Ruakuri Cave, one of Waitomo's most stunning yet treacherous systems. The air turned cold, damp walls gleamed, and the soft drip of water echoed around them. "Stay close," Oliver said, his tone calm but firm. "These caves don't take kindly to mistakes." Fueled by teenage enthusiasm, Mia barely registered the warning, her camera ready to capture the glowworms' enchantment. They ventured deeper, squeezing through narrow passages, some just 18 inches wide, where limestone walls pressed in tight. The glowworms cast a haunting blue-green glow, turning the cave into a surreal dreamscape, but beauty masked peril. About 300 feet in, they reached the Squeeze, a notorious choke point known for unstable rocks and tricky formations. Oliver led the way, his headlamp cutting through the shadows. Mia, third in line, felt the walls closing in, her breath catching in the damp air. "This is unreal," she whispered to Caleb behind her, her voice tinged with awe and nerves. Then, disaster struck. As Mia stepped onto a slippery ledge, a loose limestone slab gave way. Her right leg plunged into a tight crevice, and two massive boulders pinned it, trapping her. A shower of smaller rocks followed. One hit her side, another grazed her arm. Pain surged through her, her scream lost in the cave's oppressive silence. Fear took hold. Mia's headlamp flickered, casting wild shadows on the jagged walls. "Help!" she cried, her voice hoarse. Oliver spun around, his face pale in the dim glow. "Stay still!" he shouted, rushing to her side. The boulders, each weighing hundreds of pounds, wouldn't budge. Blood seeped through Mia's torn pants, her leg wedged tight. The cold limestone sapped her warmth, and the cave's 48-degree chill set in fast, raising the risk of hypothermia. Oliver fought to stay calm, but his hands shook as he assessed the situation. "We need help," he said, voice strained. Caleb and Ava, eyes wide with panic, offered to race to the surface for aid. Finn stayed, gripping Mia's hand, his voice trembling as he whispered, "You're gonna make it." But the darkness seemed to disagree, its weight pressing down on them all. Caleb and Ava raced through the twisting tunnels, their headlamps bouncing wildly. The narrow squeeze slowed them down, each water drip sounding like a ticking clock. Back at the crevice, Oliver and Finn worked frantically to keep Mia awake. Her face was ashen, her breaths faint. "Keep talking, Mia," Oliver urged, his voice a lifeline. She mumbled about her family, her dog, anything to stay conscious. The cold was merciless, seeping into her bones. Finn, just 17, draped his jacket over her, his hands shaking as he fought the chill. On the surface, Caleb and Ava burst into daylight, gasping as they flagged down a ranger. "She's stuck!" Caleb yelled. The ranger radioed for help, and within 30 minutes, the Waitomo Cave Rescue Unit sprang into action. Time was slipping away. Veteran caver Hannah Clark led the rescue team, armed with hydraulic jacks, wedges, and ropes, tools designed for the cave's harsh terrain. They descended into the Ruakuri Cave, their gear clanking in the eerie quiet. Reaching Mia, Hannah's team moved with precision. The glowworms' faint light bathed their work in an otherworldly glow, but the danger was stark. Mia's leg was still trapped, her body bruised and battered. Using a hydraulic jack, the team carefully lifted the smaller boulder, but the larger one held firm. "We're not giving up," Hannah said, her voice steady despite the tension. They drove a steel bar into the crevice, prying the rock apart bit by bit. Mia grimaced, pain shooting through her, but a glimmer of hope sparked in her eyes. After nearly 2 hours, the boulder shifted just enough. With a united effort, the team freed her leg. Cheers rang out, but the ordeal wasn't over. They secured Mia to a stretcher, navigating the tight squeeze with extreme care. Each jolt sent pain through her, but she held on to Finn's words. "You're gonna make it!" After a grueling climb, daylight finally greeted them. Paramedics rushed Mia to an ambulance, her friends following, shaken but relieved. At Waikato Hospital, doctors discovered 2 cracked ribs, a sprained ankle, and bruises covering her arms and torso. Miraculously, her leg wasn't broken, though the trauma lingered. Mia spent weeks recovering, haunted by the cave's relentless grip. "I thought I was untouchable," she later told friends, her voice hushed. But those caves don't care who you are. Her story rippled through the caving community, a sobering reminder of nature's power and the vital role of skilled rescuers. What can we learn from Mia's ordeal? The Waitomo Caves are a marvel, but their beauty hides dangers that demand respect. One wrong step, one unstable rock, can turn adventure into a fight for survival. Preparation, knowing the terrain, checking your gear, trusting your guide, can mean everything. If Mia's story has you rethinking your next adventure, take a moment to ask, am I ready for what's out there? Try researching your destination or double-checking your equipment before your next trip. It's a small step that could save your life. Got any prep tips for your adventures? Share them in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas. But Mia's story doesn't end there. Her rescue wasn't just luck. It was the work of a skilled team who knew the caves inside out. The Waitomo Cave Rescue Unit trains for these high-stakes moments, navigating tight spaces and racing against the clock. Their success shows why we need experts who understand nature's risks. If this tale gripped you, stick around for more real-life adventures. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop, Mia's experience reminds us. Nature is stunning, but unforgiving. Always be ready. Let's wrap it up. Mia Thompson's close call in the Waitomo Caves shows how fast excitement can turn to fear. Her survival depended on teamwork, expertise, and a spark of hope in the dark. The cave's glow may pull you in, but their depths require caution. So, next time you plan an adventure, ask yourself, what's my backup plan? Try adding one safety step this week, maybe an extra flashlight or a new skill. Your next journey might thank you. What's one takeaway from Mia's story? Drop it in the comments, and let's keep exploring the edge of thrill and survival together.